Hello everyone, welcome to another installment of the OpenText Live webinar series. My name is Dylan and I'll be moderating today's call. With me we have Fabio Cristiani and Patrick Vitale from AnswerModules, an OpenText technology partner. Today they're going to be talking about how you can extend OpenText Content Server REST APIs with the AnswerModules module suite. If you have a question for either Fabio or Patrick, you can type that question into the Q&A pod, which is located on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll answer all of those questions at the end of the presentation. Also, if you'd like to enhance the view of your screen today, you can use the plus and minus icons in the top right corner of the PowerPoint presentation to zoom in and out. And you can also find those tools under the View menu. Finally, if you'd like to review anything you saw today, you'll be able to find the recording and PowerPoint presentation on the Knowledge Center later this afternoon, and we'll be sending you a copy of those materials in the next couple of days. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Fabio, and we can begin.
Thank you very much, Dylan. Hello all, and thank you very much for being here today with us. For this presentation, I will go very quickly through a few slides, and then I will leave the word to Patrick that will show you a live presentation of the approach we're proposing for the extension of Content Server REST APIs with AnswerModules module suite. So first of all, just let me introduce ourselves very briefly. AnswerModules, for the ones that haven't seen the slide yet, we are OpenText technology partner, of course. We are a Swiss-based company, although we work with partners and customers all over the world. And we are very focused on OpenText technologies, and specifically on OpenText Content Server. In the last years, we have developed our module suite, which is a set of components and extensions for OpenText Content Server. And you can see the main parts of our offering in this slide. Beautiful Web Forms is an extension for the standard form and web forms framework on Content Server, and basically provides all the tools you need to create form-based application and maintain form-based applications on Content Server. Content Script, which we will see in more detail with Patrick later, is our scripting solution for Content Server, is probably the first and only genuine scripting solution for Content Server, and allows to create a wide range of applications and customization on Content Server. And the script console is a standalone runtime environment for AnswerModules software, and it's designed to be a standalone, an external component, so running externally from Content Server to cover those scenarios in which Content Server cannot be exposed directly. For example, to provide remote beautiful web forms to users that do not have access to Content Server. But let's get back to today's topic. So this is a few examples of things that can be done with the module suite. So you can find anything from form-based applications to streamlining workflows through the manipulation of documents on Content Server, up to creating entire customized application on Content Server. And the flexibility granted by the module suite is what we use to actually work with REST services on Content Server. So as you may know, REST APIs have been introduced in version 10.5 of Content Server and are one of the available integration endpoints for Content Server. And currently, they are probably one of the hottest points, since they have seen a lot of effort coming from, maybe related directly to the development of a backend for the future UI. And we think that REST APIs and Content Server are something that you should consider and probably invest in. And there are a few reasons for this. One is you should take into account that there is a major shift in the paradigm of the Content Server UI that is taking place. We've seen this at the Enterprise World last year, and we know that the new UI will be completely backed by this kind of technology. So we're shifting to a client-side rendering backed by REST services. Also, another critical thing that's happening is that finally with Content Server 16, LAPI will be gone. So one of the other major integration interfaces for Content Server will be no longer available. And we all know that there are lots of legacy applications still running on customers' premises that will probably need to be somewhat migrated, or their architecture will probably have to be reconsidered. And we see that OpenText itself is putting a lot of effort on REST. We see that other parts of the Content Server ecosystem, for example, document conversion service, will be made available for usage through REST API service here. And even when it comes to integrate third-party systems, the approach that is being chosen is often based on integration through REST services. So this is what's happening at the moment, and we really think that REST should be considered, so it should be taken into account as a possibility. And we think that being able to create your own REST API endpoints on Content Server could be critical. And we think this for a variety of reasons. Probably the most common is a matter of API coverage. So we know Content Server is a huge thing, and it also comes with a wide range of optional components that can be installed. And there's no way that we can think that in the very next future, the REST APIs, standard APIs, cover all of the functionalities. So it could be that if you start using them, you could find that you would need something that is not currently there. And in that case, you could either wait for it to be made available, or you could prefer to move on and create it by yourself. Also, you could have very specific needs for your domain and for the kind of implementation you made of Content Server. And in this case, maybe you will need APIs that are very specific to your case and will never be made available as generic APIs. And that's another case in which you will probably have to create them in your own. There are also another level of issues that you would want to consider. One could be, for example, the efficiency. So if you're creating a client and the available API are of too low level, you could find yourself in situations in which you have to make a large number of calls to the endpoints, and this could result in lost efficiency. So sometimes it could be easier to create a more specific endpoint that wraps all the calls, and you can simplify the design of the GUI or the client that you have in mind. This is also true for another aspect, which is robustness. So many times the client code runs on in places that are out of your control. For example, in the user's browser. So if you have an operation that is to be implemented requires, let's say, 10 different calls, and the calls are made through the user browser, you have no control on the fact that the user at a certain point in the middle of a long-running operation could decide to close the browser, and you will have probably a problem to manage on the server. And this is one scenario in which you would probably want to consider to have a single endpoint that will take care of all the backend work and only expose a single endpoint to the GUI or the client. And one last thing that is interesting and we have seen being an issue in practice is the compatibility and the interoperability with clients and libraries that already exist. So sometimes there are libraries that expect specific patterns and behaviors that could be sometimes industry standards for REST and could sometimes not be available. And there are many cases in which it is more cost-effective to implement the endpoints compared to having to put your hands on the client, which sometimes is also off limits for you. So the point is that probably it makes sense to have the possibility to create your own services. Why do we propose model suite and content script based approach to creating services? Well, there are a few advantages. One big advantage, and we've seen people asking for this, is the fact that endpoints built with content script are automatically available also for usage within the standard content server GUI. So we have a minor customization of the GUI, and you want to invoke a content script REST endpoint. You won't have to take care of authentication and all that kind of stuff. You will be automatically, the service will be automatically available for you. You will be able to call it. And it stays compatible with the standard OTCS REST service authentication. So it shares the same authentication mechanism, but is available in both flavors. Also, content script-based REST services do not require custom models to be developed and deployed in your system. So all the development is done directly on content server through the web-based tools we provide. And creating new endpoints is as easy as creating a new object on content server. So you use the add item menu, create a new object, initialize it, and the endpoint will be automatically available to your users. The fact that endpoints are actually content server objects also brings a number of advantages. We have a convention over configuration approach that lets you address the single services by name. So by simply creating an object with a specific name inside a specific container and content server, you will be able to invoke it using that very same name without having to care of object.id or whatever. And this also brings another interesting feature with content scripts are compatible with standard transport mechanisms, XML export, import. So you can simply export the node from one system and import into a different system, and the service will be automatically available on the new environment without even having to restart the server. Content scripts are also compliant with the content server permission mechanism. So you can tune accessibility of the single services by simply tuning the permissions on the service. And also they are obviously compliant with audits. All the operations performed within the script will be audited. And last but not least, there is a matter of API possibilities. So what can you do actually with your services? All the APIs that are available within content script will be usable within a REST service endpoint. So this includes all standard content server functionalities. So you will be able to manage documents, manage users, workflows, forms. You have collaboration functionalities, but also all APIs that are peculiar to content script and that allow us to have a very easy way of manipulating and merging PDF documents, manipulating Office documents, integrating with external systems such as ERPs or external database management systems. So this is some of the reasons we think our approach is a winning one. And I will give the word to Patrick that will show you what developing with content script actually means.
So thank you, Fabio. Gente, can you hear me? So thank you, Fabio, and so welcome to the risky part of this presentation. So we have just 3 more slides, and then we go to start coding some new REST services. So just a few words about how you can create a new REST services using content script and how you can access them. So basically, we have we have a conventional configuration approach. So creating a new REST service is just a matter of creating an object inside a CS services folder in the content script volume. And these new services will be automatically available to two endpoints, one that can be consumed within Content Server UI and one that can be consumed using a standard REST services authentication mechanism. And creating a new REST service is just a matter of creating your script, and we have in the library of content scripts, there's a skeleton available that allows you to create very quickly the script. Okay, the script that allows you to expose the new service. And in the near future, you will also be able to create this very same script using new visual editor that will be available with the next major release of our module suite, and will, in our opinion, will simplify amazingly the way you create scripts on Content Server. So let's jump to. I need to be the presenter. Dylan, can you make me presenter, or Fabio? Okay. So as I told you, this will be the risky part of our presentation, and we are going to doing some stuff on Content Server, trying to create new REST services. So our starting point is a very common scenario. So you want to create a REST services to implement an announcement to your standard UI. So let's say that you want your users to be able to start a workflow for each of your accounts folder, and this workflow will do for you several tasks. And you also want to be sure that you want to be able to provide a user a simple way to start a workflow for all their selected items. So what I've done is to create a new multi-item button here using our content script here. So this script that is basically implementing that button. And as you can see, we have this script. In the definition of this button, we are basically invoking this JavaScript function. And what this JavaScript function does is simply calling this REST endpoint that I've implemented with my content script. So the REST endpoint is this one. As you can see, it's just a content script object inside the CS services folder. And what this endpoint is going to do is basically for each node that I'm going to select, the system is going to to grab information for a new workflow, is going to prefill some information of the workflow. So for example, setting the title, setting some attributes to the node ID, setting some form data information, and then is going to load a Word document template from that we have defined in the variables of this script, and is going to set some variables on this document, and is going to save this newly created document in among the workflow attachments as a new document. So in this document, there are some placeholders that will be replaced by the properties. Okay. And at the very end is going to start the workflow. And we want to do this for all the items that I have selected. And obviously, we want to be able not to allow you to run simulation twice. So what we have done is interacting with the cache service in order to put just a flag in the cache service saying, okay, there's a notice operation running. Please do not display the button again. So if we go to our button, you see that if the key is available, we're not going to display the button again. So the use case is interesting because we are consuming REST services directly from within the Content Server UI. This is a case in which you have a long-running operation. You do not want to do a mess with several calls to several REST services endpoints on your browser, because you want to be sure that the workflow will be started for each selected account. So let's do it. So what is happening is that if I discarded the page and I reload the page, basically the button is gone, and until all the workflow has been started, the button won't be visible again. So this is a very simple use case in which, nevertheless, you are performing several operations such as starting a workflow, setting attributes and form fields, and creating documents. So if we go to our standard content server workflows page, you see that we have started 7 workflows, and on each of these workflows we have set attributes, we have pre-filled form values, grabbing information directly from the category attached to the node, and we also have generated this document. And inside the document, we have substituted some placeholders with information coming from categories and attributes. So you can imagine how easy it is to create these kind of complex REST services that perform a lot of operation with This was just for use case, and is a very common use case to have this kind of enhancement to the UI using REST services and JavaScript. So let's move to a more complex scenario in which you want to provide your user with a dedicated user experience for your business case. So let's say that we want to create an application over that workflow, and we have created, for this reason, a marionette application that is will be executed directly from within ContentScript. Marionette is a JavaScript framework, very useful, that allows you to create single page application easily. And these kind of applications are much more robust if you use this kind of framework, because the base code is well organized and is much simpler to perform the most common scenario. So I really suggest you to have a look at Marionette, because by the way, the same technology on which Content Server UI widget has been developed, so it's something that you might want to look at. So Marionette application, this Marionette application is basically backed by 2 ContentScript REST services. The first one is these customer REST services, and what these customer REST services is doing is basically fetching all the information about the running workflows, okay, using our API, and managing pagination and displaying information regarding the running workflows, grabbing information from attributes, from attached form, and from the task itself. So what we want basically to do is to provide the user with this kind of tile view that allows us to having direct access to some of the information available and to paginate the different tasks that the user has been assigned. As you can see, this is the kind of scenario in which you are building an application dedicated to a specific business case, and you want to provide a very unique and tailored user experience to your user. As I told you, we have started some workflows, and the tasks that are presented in this tile are exactly the same tasks that I can see in my assignments. They are all form-based tasks. So if I open one of them, you can see the form that has been displayed, and this form has been created with the beautiful web form module. So this is a beautiful web form view that allows me to have an access directly from the view to the workflow attachments. I can perform several operations. I can switch the view and exit, etc. So the second REST API that we have used to create this application allows us to display the very same view you consume from within standard Content API in this Marionette application. So what we have done is basically we have a second ContentScript service from customers that is basically grabbing the view from the system and returning it to the service in order to be able to display it in this page. And from here we can send on the tasks. So we can go to all the available workflows. We can send on them. We can delete them. So it can be really a rich user experience. What we have to develop is just these couple of REST services that are in charge of perform all these operations. So for example, when I delete a task, I basically stop the workflow and delete it in a single call. So using this kind of approach, as you have seen, you can create a very rich user experience and very a nice application. So till now we have seen two kinds of usage scenarios, quite different, but both of them were consuming the content server endpoint, so the possibility to consume REST services from within the content server, leveraging the content server authentication. So let's move to another scenario in which we are going to consume REST services using an external application. So what we have here is basically another application, another JavaScript application made with, this time with AngularJS, and is running outside from our content server. And in this application, we are going to consume both a standard content server API, so as you have seen, requires me to authenticate the content server. Okay, so we have standard content server API. So for this example, I have the content of my content server. So if we go here, you can see that is exactly the same content. We can perform with this application very simple tasks such as renaming folders, KB discussion, something like that. If we reload here, the folder has been renamed, and we can view the content of the folder. So this is made with the standard content server API. You can see here the JSON representation of the results of that is coming from the REST services that I'm invoking. What we are going to do now is to develop from scratch a workflow REST services that allows us to manage workflows. Okay. So what we have to do to go back to our REST services, I already created my workflow object. And by the way, the workflows, the REST services can invoke using this kind of URL. And what you are going basically to is this will be the name of your script and also represent the collection you are fetching it. And then for as a convention, the rest of the following part of the URL are interpreted on the basis of their meaning. So this is the first, for example, the first workflow is a single workflow, and otherwise, for example, this represents a sub-collection on the workflow. And all these information are used by the framework in order to invoke a specific method that you have defined inside your script. So let's go back to our workflows. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to load the service skeleton and we use it to create a basic REST services. Okay, I can save my my file. And what I want to do is basically start coding it. So the first thing I need to do is to provide an endpoint to fetch the entire set of workflows that are available. So we are going to use the get method, the get verb of HTTP, and we are going to use our workflow service to list all the running workflow. And for each of them, we are going to collect some information, such as the ID, and this will be the task, the workflow ID, the title, and this will be the title, the status, and maybe the due date. New date, and let's format it. So format. Otherwise, nothing. And we have to return everything as a JSON object. So it's simple as this. This will be our JSON object. So if we reload this page, you will see that we have now all the workflows with their title and their status and their ID. So what we want to do now is to implement these three functionalities. So we want to be able to stop the workflow, to update them, and to delete them, okay? So what we want to do basically is to implement all the operation related with a single workflow. So I want to rename this here, this parameter, basically the ID of the workflow that the system is going to pass to me, the work ID. And since the JSON, the JavaScript library that I'm using to implement this application is REST-Angular, which is a library for AngularJS, is going to submit application JSON requests. I have to look in the params, in the request that I've received in order to understand if there's the JSON payload. So let's define the JSON payload, and let's see if it's present in the request. So params.body, and if it is in the request, I want to use it to populate this object. So I want to create a parser for the JSON object. And then I'm going to pause. Once I have the object, I can start dealing with it. Okay, so any modify for convention on REST services comes with a put request. So I want to check if my JSON object has been stopped, for example. So the status is stopped. And in this case, probably I want to grab the original workflow, again using my workflow service. And using the parameter I've received here. And what I'm going to do is check that that workflow has not already been stopped. Something like that. And if it is not, just stop it. Okay, and we are obviously going to return as JSON the same object we have received. So if we go back here and we click on stop, okay, it's working, so we can stop all these workflows. Okay, so if I want to implement also I want to be able also to change the title of the workflow. So let's say that this time we are going to move this over here. So and if the title is different from the original title, okay, and so we use that again, the workflow to update the workflow title, and this time we are going to use this. Okay, and so basically we are able to change all these 3 to 1, 2, 3. Update. Okay, so they've been updated. So if we go back to our content server standard UI, you will see that they've been actually updated. And if we want to delete them, simple as we have to manage the delete request. So return again. What we want to do is check if the workflow has already been stopped, and if has already been stopped. So if it's not been stopped, first stopped and then delete it. Otherwise, we're going to delete it immediately. Okay. So let's say that I want to delete these 3, and very easily. So the last thing you want to do is to display detailed information about a single workflow that is running. So I have to implement the get method for a single workflow, and what I'm going basically to do is to use my workflow to return some information. So first of all, the same information I am returning for each element of the collection, obviously. So like this. And so let's format the code. And I want to add some other information, such as, for example, the attachments folder. .id. Okay, something like this. And obviously I have to return as a JSON object. So this one. And what I'm basically able to do in this it's not working. What I've done? What I thought was the risky part. I don't see any error here. The due date attachments. Strange. So let's move on. I don't know what I did something wrong, but I can't see it. So probably if I where there's for sure something. Okay, this is the correct information, and probably a right touch. Like that. Okay, much better. So typo error. And you can see here the representation. So there is all the information that we were returning, the due date, the attachments, and so on. So this is how easy it is to create a REST service that allows you to manage workflows on content server. So you can stop them, update them. You can even think of manipulating forms, attributes, and so on. My next example will be something even more interesting. So the possibility of moving this application from the browser to standalone application. So we have developed this application starting from the same AngularJS application that you have seen, but it is made from a core application. So what I can do here is basically to, again, authenticate on content server. And what this application allows me to do is to interact with my invoice management application. So I can load some invoices on content server. So they will be loaded here in documents to be processes, invoices. And I can interact natively with the desktop environment of the user. So I can put this invoice document directly. I can drag this invoice document directly to the application. And we are basically implementing this. This application is backed by another REST services that have implemented. And what this REST services is doing is creating the document on content server. So if you go to the invoice, you can see that. And is going to extract the first page of the PDF document and creating an image so that we can see the preview of the document. And is also reading directly from the document, is using our PDF service in order to extract barcodes directly from the document in order to fill in this field. And this works with very different kind of barcodes. So for example, if we have monodimensional or bidimensional barcodes, doesn't matter. The very same REST services allows me to push back this information on content server, so fill in some missing information for each of these invoices, and basically move the invoices to the next step. So this will disappear from here, and they will now be directly in my application that again is using some of these REST services. So for example, to create the preview that I'm able to show directly in this view. The last example I want to show you is how to create REST services using the new editor. So this is brand new. And to do so, basically, I'm going to use this custom endpoint. This is API, an application that will display the JSON representation of my custom REST services. As you can see here, my REST service is empty at the moment. So I'm going to edit it with the new builder. With the new builder, creating a REST services will be super easy because basically it's a matter of bringing the right components. So again, I'm starting from the REST skeleton, and I'm going to return a list of nodes. So let's define the list, REST list, and this will be initialized with an empty list, and basically will be returned as a JSON object. Okay, if I save it, you will see that now we have an empty list. And this is the source code that will be generated automatically for you from the blocking system. And from here, you will have obviously access. You can change, you can manipulate the scripts directly from here, editing your source code directly, or keep going with the blocky editor. So what I want to do is to return, as I told you, a list of nodes. So let's take some children from a node that we are going to identify by path, and this node will be my list management account folder. And I'm going to put in the list all the objects. So I'm going to append them here. So let's rename here to node. And we are going to create get node. And we are going to map the properties of the node. Okay, so I am going to provide, for example, an ID, a name, an ID, a name, and maybe some additional information such as the subtype. Okay, and I'm going to grab this information directly from my node. So the ID and the name and the subtype. Okay, I can save it. If we reload this page, you will see that we have, for all the elements in that folder, we have the ID, the name, and subtype, etc. So if we go back to that folder here, you'll see that for each of these nodes, we also have attached a category, account, so we can be interested in having also a account name here. So account name, and we are going to duplicate this to have account, which is the name of the category, and company name, which is the attribute. So account, company name. Okay, and I'm going to save. Probably I receive an error. Okay, so the problem here is that basically in the same folder we also have objects that do not have that category. So for example, the script and the custom view. So what I'm going to do to fix it is simply use the try to execute block in order to skip the errors. And that's it. You can see here that we have the account name that is valid directly from the category. So you have seen how easy it is, and we'll be creating a new REST services using this Blockly editor. And you will be able to customize for your script using the standard editors or keeping going with this. So this concludes my presentation. And so if there are questions, go back to the panel. So if you have any question, we can try to answer them.
All right, thanks, guys. So we do have some questions in the Q&A. And again, I'll just remind everyone that if you have a question at this time for either Fabio or Patrick, you can type those questions into the Q&A pod. So our first question comes from Guy. Is REST API, will it work with Content Server 10 and any service pack or update, or does it have to be 10.5?
Yeah, is available. Yeah, I respond to. Yeah, well, basically will be available with Server 10, and so as soon as the standard REST services are available, so I don't remember exactly the service pack on which they became available, but if you have REST services on your environment, doesn't matter if it's 10 or 10.5, REST services will work as well. Our content script REST services will work as well.
Okay, thank you. Another question regarding REST services. Does that work with a certain browser, or do you know if they work with all browsers, if it works with all browsers?
Well, there is no issue with any browser, so as long as you consume them with a JavaScript library that works with your browser, and the ones that I've shown you, Marionette or jQuery or AngularJS, works very well with any browser. There's no problem with the version of your browsers or the technology you're using. They work even with Node.js applications. So if you are developing a Node.js application, they works well even with that kind of technology.
Okay, thank you. I have a question from Roll. Are we going to show a sample with the new Content Server 16 interface? So no, the answer is no. Fabio answered that in the chat. Sorry about that. Is there an Intellisense feature?
So Intellisense, can you explain better with?
I think Guy wrote that when Patrick was typing the code in the content script editor. The content script editor has content assist, so there is a keyboard shortcut to autocomplete the code you're running with all the available APIs. So I hope that was the question.
Okay, thank you. Question from Giovanni. Do you have training programs?
Yeah, we do have training programs right now. So we have a training offer.
Yeah, contact us directly if you're interested in this, and we can discuss it.
Yeah.
Okay. Does the editor support debugging? For instance, we just faced a typo issue. Is there anything in the software that could help us find that sort of thing?
Yeah, there is. Let me share again my screen. There's different kind of debugging possibilities offered by the script itself. So basically, if I am making a mistake, the script will be validated immediately while I'm typing. You can see here validation status. There's also quite an interesting logging system that allows you to log any error and having access directly from the interface to the logs of the model suite. So you will be able to manage log for each change log level of your script and then access directly from the log. And there is also an extension package that allows you to debug your scripts directly from within the user interface. And this is a very simple debug experience. I mean, it's not so complex as you can imagine, but allows you to see the execution, to follow the execution of your script while is running. So there are different possibilities offered directly from the editors.
Thank you. Will OpenText directory services be a requirement to work with Content Server REST API, or does it know how to connect to LiveLink without directory services?
No, OpenText directory service is not a requirement, as you have seen from this demonstration. And again, having the two endpoints, you will be able to consume content script REST services from within the content server UI, so from, for example, from custom view or appearances using JavaScript without having to manage any other form of authentication. So basically, being already authenticated on content server is very similar to any other request standards defined on your system. So you can invoke them directly.
Okay. And in the demo, were you using directory services?
No, I was not using the directory service. So this is plain LiveLink, content server authentication. And
okay. At the beginning, you showed how to add a function button, but I missed the part. Sorry. Is it possible to make a button available based on a content server group membership?
Yeah, sure. Again, I have to share my screen. So as many other aspects of the model suite, creating this kind of customization means creating a script in a specific position of the content script volume, in this case, content script multi-buttons. And what this script does, and what you can basically do from here using, again, the snippets available by announcement. So I want to add a new menu. Is basically you can use the oral API in order to understand if, for example, if the current user, let's say, is a member of a specific group and so on, and then take decision over that and something like that, and then display the script or not. And Fabio suggests me, very, very smart, that being a content server object, you can even apply permission on this script and will be automatically available for your group.
Okay, thank you. And we have a question from Pavel, who asked what the price is of using content server scripts. I wonder if he just means, like, what's the downside to using content server scripts?
So you can contact us directly for having information regarding the price and the licensing. And what I can tell you is that the licensing is aligned to the OpenText software, so it's nothing strange.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to go through the Q&A to make sure that I didn't miss anything, but if you have another question for the team, just type it into the Q&A pod. Try to get to that. Okay, so Fabio and Patrick, I don't see any other questions in the Q&A. Do you have anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, I think we have gone through all the points. I would like to thank everybody. Oh, I see there's another question, sorry.
Okay, yeah, one last minute question. So if is what we're doing just adding some kind of REST API on top of what is available from OpenText, and what you provide is predefined functions that you've developed? Is that correct?
No. Well, it's basically this is just one of the ways you can think of using content script. Content script is not only meant to be used to create REST APIs. And the other thing is content script has its APIs that match content server APIs, so you can perform document management, user management, and whatever workflow management on content server. But it also comes with extension packages, so you can do many things that cannot be done out of the box with content server. So for example, manipulating PDF documents, manipulating Office documents, or integrating with SAP or other things that cannot be done with standard functionality.
So if you remember from my presentation, at the beginning I was starting a workflow and I was basically injecting some properties in the Word document, and at the end of the presentation I was using, for example, our PDF service in order to grab information out of the PDF regarding the barcode that was in the PDF document, and all this kind of stuff are not available out of the box with other content server API. So this is a plus. So I also forgot that there's one last slide, and you can find some valuable resources on our website regarding what we have showcased today. So there are a previous version of our REST Playground that is available for download, as well as other resources that you might be interested in.
Okay, thanks guys. So I think with that we're going to wrap things up for today. Thanks to Patrick and Fabio for their presentation. And if you'd like to review anything that you saw today, you'll be able to find the recording and PowerPoint presentation on the Knowledge Center. Go to knowledge.opentext.com/go/webinars. That's where you'll find it. And keep watching your email for future webinars. And we'll talk to you next time. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Bye.